Many people in this world who have been inspired by our videos, who have been inspired by my books, by the general teachings of the ISDS. We wish to follow Sanatana Dharma in the most authentic, the most traditional, the most orthodox, the most real way imaginable. This being the case, one of my personal tasks is indeed to restore the complete system of Vedic spirituality. Good. Wonderful. Well, once again, welcome everyone. It's absolutely wonderful having you all here. Thank you so much for traveling from such far distances. Most of you, some of course are actually from here, from the Omaha area. But in any case, it is absolutely wonderful having you here. This talk that I'm going to be giving is going to be an extremely unique talk, even for me, as even someone who's known for giving unique talks. This talk in itself is actually going to be indeed quite unique. And what it's going to be about is indeed restoring the complete Vedic system. The complete Vedic system. Now, what exactly is meant by this? Because, as you know, I've said this many times in the past, that one thing that is wonderful about the Vedic system is that it's intact. It's not that we're missing anything. It is indeed intact. Everything is there. The scriptures are there. The lineage is there. The gurus are there. The practices are there, etc. So everything is indeed available to us. However, at the same time, again, the complete system, the complete Vedic system, today, in 2020, at this juncture, the Kali Yuga, is indeed not fully understood and not practiced. So, what do I mean by the very title of this, Restoring the Complete Vedic System? That in order to fully understand and practice the Vedic system to its absolute fulfillment, we indeed need to understand what the complete system is and indeed to practice it. So, with that, let me now go on to give this talk about this. Sanatana Dharma, in and of itself, is a fully integrated system. It is a system that is a theory of everything, what sometimes in philosophy is called a TOE, theory of everything. Now let me explain what is meant by that. Within the realm of philosophy, both quote-unquote Eastern and Western, not every philosopher necessarily tries to create a theory of everything. Not every philosopher is what I have called a system creator, a system builder. Rather, most philosophers will focus on one aspect of reality. Some people focus, for example, on ethics. Some people focus on religion, etc. All the many different fields of human thought that might exist. However, once in a while, you will have either an individual thinker or a thought system that is indeed a TOE, a theory of everything, meaning that the idea of the philosophical system being presented is that it is indeed a system designed to explain quite literally everything in reality. Everything. From the spiritual to the religious, to indeed the philosophical, to even the political, to the historical, to the scientific, etc. In other words, a Weltanschauung, a worldview, a view of indeed reality itself. Again, it's a rare thing that this actually occurs in history, even with the greatest philosophers. There have been historically only a few individuals who have attempted to be indeed system builders and to create a theory of everything. In the Western world, certainly such individuals like this would include people like Plato, people like Aristotle, people like Thomas Aquinas. He was absolutely a system builder, even though he was a Christian. Interestingly, in his Summa Theologica, he attempted to provide an explanation for all things, for all reality. A few of these other individuals, Gemistus Platon, someone who not a lot of people know of, but he lived in roughly the 15th century, and he was also an individual who tried to create a theory of everything. And interestingly, from a combination of both an ancient Hellenistic perspective coupled with Orthodox Christianity, which was a very interesting attempt on his part. Certainly Kant, Hegel as well were system builders. They tried to create theories of everything. Marx also was very much a system builder. This is why when you read Marxism, when you read Marx, you analyze Marxism, what you see is that indeed Marxist philosophy comments upon every single aspect of the human experience, which makes it both very systematic, also in the case of Marxism, very deadly, unfortunately. Very deadly to tradition, very deadly to reality. A few other people, Freud, for example, interestingly, people tend to see Freud as primarily a psychoanalyst, which he was, but he also, interestingly, from the perspective of psychoanalysis, tried to create, indeed, a theory of everything. From the Vedic perspective, there are too many names to talk about as far as individuals like this. The last was Prabhupada. Certainly, the very last was Prabhupada. This is why when we analyze the works of Prabhupada, when we analyze his talks, when we analyze his concerns as far as his teaching, he attempted to cover every single aspect of the human experience. Again, not just spirituality. And this is indeed the hallmark of a system builder, of a system creator, that they talk again about not just one thing, but everything. When you analyze the works of Prabhupada, again, certainly his primary, let's say, his primary goal was, of course, to speak about spirituality, about how to know Krishna, about how to have bhakti or devotion toward Krishna, about how to achieve liberation from the material world, etc. That was certainly the foundation of what he spoke about, but it was not the totality of what he spoke about. Rather, what else did he speak about? Everything. He spoke about culture. He spoke about history. He spoke about art. Indeed, a lot of people don't know this, but he actually went very deeply into the nature of the aesthetic in many of his conversations with some of his devotees who specifically were artists. Politics? Oh yes, he spoke about politics. I personally, over many years, collected pretty much every single statement that Prabhupada has made on the realm of politics, and he had much to say. Social sciences, that is, Varna Ashram. Basically, social sciences, how it is that a society should run in accordance with the various classes that we find here, etc. And I can go on and on. Prabhupada was a system builder. He created a full vision of reality. So, all this being said, interestingly, when we go back to the very foundations of Vedic, let's say Vedic civilization, the rishis, the individuals who indeed revealed the very Vedic scriptures themselves, were also system builders. However, I have to qualify that. Rather than system builders in this case, with the rishis, the individuals who quite literally revealed the Vedic way, I would call them rather system revealers. They are individuals who indeed revealed not just a system. You see, this is the difficulty. Now, you remember all these various names that I mentioned. Many of these individuals even being at odds with one another. You have Plato on the one hand, Thomas Aquinas, who were very religious, very spiritual. Then you have people like Marx and Freud, who were the very opposite. The only thing that united them all was, indeed, they were attempting to create a system. They were attempting to create an explanation of all things. However, what the difference is between, let's say, their attempted Weltanschauungs versus the worldview of Sanatana Dharma is that it is indeed not something that is created. It is not something that is the result of human speculation, but rather is revealed. So thus, the rishis, technically speaking, you could say, were indeed system builders, but rather, better term, system revealers. What they revealed was, indeed, Dharma. The natural way, the natural order, as it pre-existed even their thought, as it pre-exists humanity itself, that is, as it is indeed eternal, as it always has been, and as it shall be in the future. Very good. There is absolutely, within the system of Sanatana Dharma, there is absolutely no area of human concern that is not addressed. And as I say this, I mean this quite literally. You can think of any field, and I mean any field, not just the obvious ones. Not just the ones that any of us can kind of rattle off, very quickly. Oh, religion itself, philosophy, the aesthetic, cultural, political, economic, etc. Not just the main ones, but even subfields and subfields within those subfields. There is quite literally no area of human concern within the totality of the human experience, either perceptual or conceptual, that is not addressed by Sanatana Dharma, and not merely addressed, but again revealed. In other words, addressed perfectly. So thus, this is the nature of Sanatana Dharma. One very nice example of this is the yoga system itself. Thus far with this conference, we have been both doing and hearing a lot about yoga, about the system of yoga. Yoga itself is a perfect example within the Vedic system of, indeed, an area of the Vedic system that addresses every aspect of the human experience. Because what is the nature of yoga? For those individuals who have studied yoga, for those individuals who know what yoga is, what is yoga? Is it merely asana? Is it merely something physical, as so many more materialistic sort of pseudo-spiritualists in the West think? That it's a matter of, oh yes, you're in LA and you stroll to your local yoga center with your yoga mat under your arm and you go there and you sweat a little bit and, oh, I've done yoga. No, of course not. Yoga in actuality is indeed the Ashtanga system. It is the Eightfold Yoga. And why is it not the One-fold Yoga? Why is it the Eightfold Yoga system? Because yoga itself indeed, again, addresses every aspect of what it means to be a human person. As we look around in this audience, we see that, of course, we are all human persons. What does it mean to be a human person? It means that we recognize that we are multi-dimensional beings. We're not merely what we see on the surface level. Again, you can literally look around. What are you seeing? Just a body. You can converse. Oh, you begin to have the personality revealed to you a little bit, and then you begin to understand that, oh, much more than simply the surface level. There is an ocean of personality that is there within the person, but more. Again, we are multi-dimensional beings. Thus, understanding this, yoga as the perfect path, the perfect process by which we engage in spiritual unfoldment, addresses every aspect of who we are. So thus, the moral, the ethical, through the yamas and niyamas. Yoga, indeed, does address the physical, the energetic. It deals with the vital, with prana, with the vital aspect of the human being. It deals with emotions, it deals with the mind, it deals with the intellect. It deals with the very identity of the individual, the egoic self. That is, what is it that we are identifying with at any given moment? Our true self, or something that, due to conditioning, due to our surrendering our ego to that which is not, something that we are temporarily identifying ourselves with, etc. So the egoic aspect of who we are. But then finally, of course, the highest aspect, the most important aspect, and that is soul, that is consciousness, that is Atman. So thus, as kind of a microcosmic example of the macrocosmic Sanatana Dharma itself, we see that with even yoga. Yoga is not one thing. It tries to address the totality of the human person. Thus, Sanatana Dharma itself, in a greater sense, attempts to, I say attempts, it very much succeeds at addressing, again, every single field of concern. So, this being the case, one of the hallmarks of Sanatana Dharma is indeed that it harmonizes, not only recognizes, but harmonizes all of these various aspects of reality. It harmonizes first, again, each of us as an individual, through using the yoga process. What is yoga? What is the translation of the word yoga? Someone, please.
Union.
Union, very good. Union within ourselves as a living being, as a human person. What does that mean? Full integration. Full integration. This is the most basic level upon which Sanatana Dharma seeks integration, harmony. That is, first of all, with ourselves as a human person. Again, all these different aspects that I spoke about. For the typical person, they're usually at war with each other. Our mind won't cooperate with the body won't cooperate with, see, all sorts of various dimensions of who we are. Well, one thing that we are seeking is indeed that integration of the person. More. integration, and harmony within family. You know, family is something that's crucial. Everyone says that, or at least intelligent people. Some people are overtly and very vocally at war with the family, i.e. Marxists and other such individuals. But most people will indeed see the family as a positive thing. But what does that mean? More than anything, there has to be harmony within the family. And for there to be harmony, there has to be a point of union. And indeed, Dharma provides that point of union. So thus, Dharma seeks union within the family. Then, again, we're extending upward. Community, harmony within one's community. The nation, harmony within and integration of and union of the people of a nation. The actual individuals who constitute the ethnos of that nation, the very heart of that nation. And then, again, by further extension, Dharma seeks harmony between the people of the nation and the ruler of that nation. The real ruler, the true ruler, the ideal ruler, an individual who is not merely someone who is elected and through corrupt means has become the ruler of that nation, but rather an individual who is indeed the very manifestation of the spirit of the people of that nation. When you have such a ruler, when you have, to state it Vedically, such a king, then there is unity, and there is one mind, one goal, one sense of togetherness between the people of that nation and the ruler of that nation. The cosmos. Finally, ultimately, Sanatana Dharma seeks harmony between all the various aspects of the very cosmos itself. That is, the earthly realm, the realm of nature upon the earth, the realm of the devas, svarga, the realm of the gods, and then finally, harmony between the material world and the spiritual realm, that is God himself, where ultimately, the ultimate harmony that Vedic civilization is seeking is a harmony in which everything that is here within the material world expresses itself in such a manner that it is itself a representation of God upon the earth, of the spiritual, of the transcendent upon the earth itself. So, indeed, Sanatana Dharma seeks harmony between all things. With a clarification, with a caveat. Sanatana Dharma seeks the harmony of all things, with the exception of that which is adharmic. With the exception of those individuals, those groups of people, those ideologies, those behaviors, those ways of being that are indeed adharmic, the very opposite of dharma. Rather than seeking harmony with evil, what Sanatana Dharma seeks is the eradication of evil. So evil, that is adharma, is the one thing that Sanatana Dharma does not seek union with, but rather vinashaya dushkritam, the eradication of evil in this world. All that being said, we are living in the Kali Yuga. We are living in the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga is over 5,100 years old. And we hear this term all the time, and I'm not going to go very deeply into the nature of the Kali Yuga. The reason why is because with my second talk, which will be later in the early evening, around 5 p.m., I'm going to be talking very deeply about the actual nature of the Kali Yuga, hopefully in ways that people actually have not heard in the past. But we are indeed living in a very, very dark age. We are living in an age that is 5,100 years old, in which the hallmark of this age is indeed the very opposite of what I was just talking about. Dharma seeks integration, seeks harmony. In the Kali Yuga, what we have seen is the very opposite of that: disintegration, disharmony, the falling apart of that which is good, the dissection of that which is good. So what we see is that while the Vedic system began as a unified system, and while it was indeed a unified system for all of the previous 3 yugas, and even into, let's say, the first 1,000 years roughly of the Kali Yuga, what we have seen is that with the progression of the Kali Yuga, there has been an ongoing disintegration of everything that we know as dharmic harmony. what we have seen is that there has been an arising of religious compartmentalization. There has been the fragmentation of man, of the human person. There has been an increased need of specialization due to the disintegration of memory itself. Memory has been reduced, and without memory, there can be no integration within the human person. It is for this reason that both the enervating nature of this very age itself has had the effect of making us forgetful, reducing our memory, but also by design, our very memory as a people has been systematically stolen from us. Historically, and even as far as literally our ability to use our memory. So this is where we find ourselves today. As a result, what we have seen is that tragically, very sadly, even within the realm of Sanatana Dharma itself, we have seen this process of disintegration. Thus, again, the title of this talk, The Restoration of the Complete Vedic System. What we have seen is that today, again, in 2020, even among those of us who are actually rather intelligent, rather spiritual, rather, let's say, orthodox in our approach to Vedic spirituality. So, New Age imbeciles aside. We're talking about even among individuals who truly want to try to follow authentic Vedic spirituality. What we have seen is that it has been a little bit of a challenge, and this is the reason why. What was at one time a unified Vedic system has now become separated into 4 almost separate areas of spiritual concern, with some overlap. But still, what we see now, when we think about the Vedic world, Vedic spirituality, it really has become 4 separate things. And let me explain this a little bit. Let me tell you, first of all, what these 4 separate areas of spiritual concern are. The first is Vedanta, that is, the philosophical approach. Those individuals who indeed want to take a very philosophical approach and Atato Brahma Jignasa, indeed, inquire into the nature of the Absolute. That's number 1. Number 2 is indeed the yogic. We see that, again, there is the yoga realm. Individuals who want to do practices in order to develop themselves spiritually and to come to that point of, again, integration in themselves as a person. The third aspect is what Sanskritically would be called mimamsa, and that is, let's say, priestcraft, ritual, yajna, etc. The fourth, finally, is bhakti itself, that is, devotional awareness of God, coming to know God through devotion and surrendering ourselves fully to God, thus achieving the highest meaning of all life and of all existence, and that is God consciousness, Krishna consciousness. So interestingly, what do we see today? What we see is that when an individual says, oh yes, I want to devote myself to spiritual unfoldment, spiritual growth in the Vedic system, they tend to pick one or another of these. Again, with a little bit of overlap. There certainly is always overlap. Thus, of course, you'll have some people who are strict yogis who will also delve a little bit into Vedanta. You'll have individuals who are strict bhaktas who maybe will do a little bit of yoga also, etc. But for the most part, today what we see is that indeed there is a division in practice and in theory, in both theory and practice, where for the most part an individual will either be a Vedantist, a Vedantin, that is, they will take a rigidly philosophical approach, or they will be a bhakta. You know, for myself, let me tell you, as an individual who I've been a bhakta for the vast majority of my life, and through several organizations, including ISKCON, etc., and I'm sure many people have encountered this, we will encounter the devotee who, yes, I want to know Krishna, I want to know Krishna, I want to know Krishna. What? Yoga? That's my body. Yoga. Yoga? No, just chant Hare Krishna, that's it. Don't worry about yoga. Really? Even though the entirety of the Bhagavad Gita is that the Bhagavad Gita is a yoga text, even though Krishna speaks about yoga again and again and again and again and again, even though this is our tradition. So we see this, that an individual today will lean very heavily toward one of these 4 different things. In actuality, all of these 4 areas of spiritual concern are meant to be practiced simultaneously. They are meant to be practiced together. And I'm kind of jumping to the conclusion of my talk, but I just need to say this now. I have been a Vaishnava since roughly 10. I realized that no, the gods were not all the same. I realized that no, it's not a matter of choose which god you like and just worship that god. I realized when I was about 10 years old, in fact on my first reading of the Bhagavad Gita, I realized then, no, this person who is speaking in the Bhagavad Gita, that's God. And who is that? That's Krishna. So for myself, I have been a Vaishnava for, again, the vast majority of my life. And let me tell you that on that basis, I can say this to you. Vedanta exists to know Krishna. Vedanta is Vaishnava. Yoga exists to know Krishna. Yoga is Vaishnava. Mimamsa, that is all the ritual aspects, all the rich, beautiful ritual aspects of Sanatana Dharma exist for one purpose, and that is to mold our being and to mold our awareness in such a way that we can know Krishna. And then what to speak of bhakti? The only goal of bhakti is indeed to surrender our very being at the feet of Bhagavan. So, this is my point, that if indeed we consider ourselves to be Vaishnavas, we mustn't think, oh, what that means is just chant Hare Krishna. I don't need any of that Vedanta stuff, that yoga stuff, that what's the word? Ritualism, made up word that I can't stand. The word ritualism is used by individuals who don't understand the meaning and the purpose and the importance of ritual. Indeed, you want to understand the importance of ritual, half of Shruti, that is half of our most important scriptures, are devoted to ritual. Thus, don't poo-poo ritual and just call it ritualism. No, if we are Vaishnavas, we have to understand the proper context and how to use ritual. What is its actual purpose? Very good. So, with all that being said, of these four different aspects, these four different areas of spiritual concern that we find in the Vedic system, interestingly, what we've seen for the last 4,000 years has been that not only has there been somewhat of a slight Cold War kind of conflict between all four, but very specifically between the yoga system versus the priestly system. This is what we've seen more than anything, and we see these skirmishes arise again and again, just for the last 4,000 years. Previous to that era, these divisions didn't exist whatsoever. But what we have seen is that indeed Vedic society historically tends to lean either kind of toward the priestly, that is ritual, but then it'll go to the opposite extreme, where then as a reaction you'll have individuals who arise and who will almost reject the ritual aspect and just focus on yoga, meditation, being disciplined, being ascetic, being spiritual warriors, etc. One of the greatest eras in which we see the example of this was during the era of the Buddha. So roughly 5th, 6th century BC, something like that. Where what do we see? Indeed, the Buddhist scriptures themselves talk about this. In fact, Prabhupada spoke about this, about how the Buddha was kind of a rebel against the priests. Because at the time of the Buddha, the priestly class, unfortunately, had become not just dominant, but unfortunately their understanding of what was the purpose of ritual was not quite authentic. And they were misusing the idea of ritual. Thus, what happened at around that time? You find the Buddha, you find Mahavira, you find Vedic yogis, you find these ascetics who suddenly appeared and rejected, again, this overemphasis on the priestly class and on ritual done for the wrong purposes. And what did they do? They left polite society and they went into the forests. These were the Shravakas, these were the individuals who became Aranyakas, these were the individuals who became the forest dwellers and who revived yoga. Interestingly, many of these people originally were warriors. That's something I mentioned in our video, The Dharma Warrior. It's something I've spoken about quite a bit. But the point is, you see this tension in the last 4,000 years, specifically between the ritualists versus the yogis. So this is one thing that we've seen. Another thing that we have seen has been the arising in the Kali Yuga of both sectarianism and denominationalism. So again, a further disintegration of what was at one time a unified system of pure Vedic spirituality, what we today call Sanatana Dharma. So you begin to see within the context of the Kali Yuga the arising of sectarianism, literally sects, but then also denominations, that is religious, so-called religious traditions. So even within the Vedic tradition itself, we now have what is called Trimarga, the three paths of Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and Shaktism. And what we've seen is that today, they're very pronounced. If you're a follower of the Vedic system, you either are a Vaishnava, or you are a Shaiva, or you are a Shakta. Interestingly, however, if you go back, again, to the furthest historical recesses of the Vedic tradition, while you always had these various gods and goddesses, and you had individuals who, oh yes, maybe they were more devoted to Shiva a little bit more so than Vishnu, etc. You didn't have this idea of these being three radically separate paths. You didn't call yourself a Vaishnava necessarily versus a Shaiva. Rather, it was understood by all people that yes, you have your Ishtadevata for one reason or another. You find yourself more attracted to a specific god or goddess. However, all people who followed the Vedic system understood that above all of the gods and goddesses, ultimately there was Vishnu. Ultimately, there was Narayana, there was Vishnu Tattva. This was understood. Thus, previous to the Kali Yuga, again, previous to 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, you didn't really have three separate paths. Rather, you had an integrated system. Then, of course, there is the arising of denominationalism. That is what today we call religions. You know, you've heard me say this in a few of my lectures, how, the idea of religions, as we understand it today, the plural, is something rather new. And when I say rather new, roughly 4,000 years or so, even in the first roughly 1,000 years of the Kali Yuga, this idea of denominationalism, that, oh yes, I am following this world religion, you're following a different world religion, didn't exist. Did not exist. Rather, there was the natural division of Dharma, Nadharma, of Astika, Nastika, of the idea that you either were following the natural way or you were not. But, again, what we saw was the arising of denominations. And this begins, certainly within the context of Sanatana Dharma, with those religions that eventually broke off directly from Sanatana Dharma, beginning with Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster and ancient Persia at one time being indeed Vedic. This is a point of contention among no one who understands history. We understand that at one time, what we call Persia or Iran was indeed Vedic. But then came Zoroaster, who began a new revelation in accordance with his ideas, and Zoroastrianism was born. This is the first instance, really one could say, in history, the history of mankind, of a denomination being born. But then we also have Buddhism, which again started off as an aspect of Sanatana Dharma, but then within several hundred years after the Buddha, Buddhism became a separate, quote-unquote, denomination. Same thing with Jainism, same thing with Sikhism. Now, these are religions that broke off directly from that, let's say, that tree, that root of Sanatana Dharma. But then, of course, you have those adharmic denominations, which did not break off directly from Sanatana Dharma, not really. And that is what we call Abrahamism. So you have, of course, Judaism. You have Abrahamic Christianity, and I always have to make that distinction. Not true Christianity. We believe that Jesus was a Dharma master. But what we have seen is that institutionally, Christianity for the bulk of its history has indeed been Abrahamic inspired. So we have that. We have, of course, Islam. But then we also have those other, let's say, denominations, for lack of a better word, that we don't necessarily always associate with Abrahamism, but are Abrahamic nonetheless. So one small sect, for example, are the Baha'is. The Baha'is serve as a bridge, an interesting demonic bridge, actually, between, on the one hand, Abrahamic religiosity, but then on the other hand, political social justice theory. That's Baha'ism. But then, by further extension, we have Marxism. For any of you who have read the Dharma Manifesto, you know that I classify Marxism as an ideology, again, as a Weltanschauung, as a worldview, as being absolutely 100% Abrahamic in nature. Abrahamic in content, in theory, in thought, in its historical origins, etc. And then finally, Luciferianism. Luciferianism is another, let's say, religious ideology that is demonic in nature, but one could say is indeed a denomination. What we are called upon today, the task that we have today, indeed the very purpose of both this talk, but also of myself being here present on the planet, but also the goal of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, is indeed to restore this integration of Sanatana Dharma itself. That is, to indeed restore the complete Vedic system. That is, we as individuals who, of course, I know everyone who is here, those who could not make it for a variety of reasons, many people in this world who have been inspired by our videos, who have been inspired by my books, by the general teachings of the ISDS. We wish to follow Sanatana Dharma in the most authentic, the most traditional, the most orthodox, the most real way imaginable. This being the case, one of my personal tasks is indeed to restore the complete system of Vedic spirituality. And what is meant by this? If you can envision, this is what we as practitioners, not theorists, not individuals who just kind of have a passing curiosity, intellectual sort of curiosity into Sanatana Dharma, but as individuals who truly want to explore how deeply can I truly practice this? What is the furthest degree to which I can unfold and develop myself spiritually in accordance with the Vedic system? For us, this is what we are to envision, that indeed, in practice, but also understanding, we are to practice this full system of integrating all four of these areas of concern that, again, artificially became divided. So thus, this is what a Vedic practitioner looks like, if you wish to know. This is what I do, as you can see and hear. This is what I expect any of my students, disciples, followers, supporters of the ISDS to do. Indeed, this is what every follower of Sanatana Dharma in the future should look like. We should be individuals who understand, study Vedanta perfectly. And what is meant by Vedanta? It means literally Vedanta. It means the Vedantic system. It means that we are indeed to understand philosophically what is the meaning of life, who we are, what is the nature of this reality around us, and what is ultimately the nature of God. We are indeed to study the Brahma Sutras. We are to study the Upanishads. We are to use the processes, the methodologies of Vedic analysis that are there in Vedanta in order to understand our true self, etc. So thus, you are to be Vedantins, followers of Vedanta. Also, we are meant to be yogis. We are yogis. We are yogis in the true sense of this term. We are individuals who are meant to practice the full yoga system. As those individuals who I have personally taught yoga to will attest, I teach the full yoga system, and we are indeed meant to practice it all. What does that mean? That means that we can't be lazy in one aspect of our existence. That means we can't claim that we're spiritual practitioners, but we don't take care of ourselves physically. It means, no, we do asanas. It means we can't claim that we are spiritual practitioners, but we don't even know, what are the yamas and niyamas? What are the ethical precepts of the yoga system? No, we must not only know them, we must follow them perfectly. It means that we are to develop ourselves intellectually, mentally. It means that we must develop ourselves in the psychic, sukshma sharira aspects of who we are. That is, the energetic aspects of who we are. It means that we must be steeped in meditation, that everything that we do, everything from sitting to speaking to sleeping to quite literally everything we do in meditative awareness. That is, understanding who we are as Atman, living as Atman, and at all times having God, having Krishna there in the forefront of our awareness. This is what it means to be a yogi. This is how we are to live. We are meant to understand ritual. This is something very important that needs to be revived. We need to understand what is the purpose, what is the process of yajna, Vedic fire ceremony, and how Vedic fire ceremony, but then also puja and all the many ritualistic aspects are meant not simply as a form of empty ritualism, just kind of empty motions of the body, but no. The reason why we practice ritual is because we are practicing with our full being the idea of surrender and the idea of, again, harmony with that which hierarchically is above us. Why do we do yajna? We do yajna such that we may quite literally open a portal within materiality such that we can now commune with the gods and with God. That's why we do ritual, and we must do ritual in this sense. And then finally, within our very being, the foundation of it all, and that is we must practice bhakti, and truly practice bhakti. No, bhakti is not as simplistic as many of us have been told. It's not, oh, just sit down, shut up, chant Hare Krishna. Oh, bhakti is infinitely greater than this. Bhakti is the foundation of our very soul. It's the very foundation of our Atman, of our being itself. The soul did not literally come into being, but if one could metaphorically say that it did, our very soul has come into being to express bhakti. And that is its purpose. So thus, when we understand the crucial importance of devotion to God and how with every breath we take, we can and should express that devotion to God with everything that we do, with everything that we think, with every word that comes out of our mouth. When we understand this, now we have established a foundation by which, again, we have achieved that integration. We have achieved yoga. We have achieved that true union between ourselves as Atman and God as Paramatman, as God, that being who is our source, who is the soul of our soul, who is our reason for being, and who is indeed our very best friend, who we were born to love and who loves us in turn, reciprocally. So thus, what the International Sanatana Dharma Society endeavors to do is to indeed create, one could say, a spiritual cadre of individuals who are practicing this complete Vedic system in its totality, and thus recreating for the future a community of sages. We want to create quite literally an army, a community of individuals who are sadhus, who are sages. That is our goal. And more, that is the goal we're going to achieve.